to Talking Comfort Live, a show that reminds us just how cool HVAC can be by discussing today's hot topics in home comfort. From learning to laughing and sharing personal experiences, to challenging the leading industry narratives, our show goes deep inside the world of mini splits, heat pumps, and the inverter technology that brings efficient comfort to GREE products. And you can help us in our charge to make HVAC cool. We're looking for you to be a part of the show. If you have a question, whether it centers around an application, installation, preventative maintenance, troubleshooting, industry news, or anything we share on the show, please send it our way using the question mark icon to the right. We might take it live. Now, grab a bucket and take a break. It's time for Talking Comfort Live.
Thanks for joining us on our 9th episode this year. The question is, why do we do this? And that is to help you lead your customers to the perfect comfort solution and to maintain your expert level product knowledge. So this is for you. To get the most out of it, we invite you to be a part of it. Send us your questions or thoughts at any time. Use the question mark icon to the right of the screen. We'll be checking throughout the show and including them in our discussion as we move along. But we encourage you to send all of your questions and thoughts anytime, because we'll be checking on those throughout the show. So let's start talking comfort. Let's begin by going straight to what's become our favorite for many of our viewers, the Misnometer. All right, so let's check the Misnometer. The same charging methods work for single speed and inverter driven systems. Well, is that true, guys?
No.
All right. So what are some of the differences that we might discuss between charging single speed versus inverter driven equipment?
Well, realistically, whether you're talking single speed or 2-speed versus an inverter driven system, when you're talking single speed or 2-speed, you have a means or a method to lock that into second speed, or you only have the 1 speed. We have a truly inverter driven unit, such as the GREE units that we sell and support. These are fully variable systems. So in order to charge them properly, you would have to know, you'd have to have a way to lock them to a specified speed and then have the data behind it to be able to charge it adequately. So that's why we tell you the easiest way on an inverter-driven system is you're going to have to actually, provided you've got to mess with the charge in the outdoor unit. Let's talk about that for a minute. So on a new installation, your charge is already in your outdoor unit. So all we really need to do is calculate the charge we need for our line set in our indoor unit. But let's say we're servicing. Now, it's a little different story. We've got to know that calculation for our line set and our indoor units. We're also going to need to know the charge for the outdoor unit. And you're going to best off recover that refrigerant, weigh that charge back in. Because that we don't have set speeds to it. The thing's going to do everything it can to save itself, unlike unitary product. It doesn't have that ability. That's one of the great advantages to the GREE equipment, is these things are loaded with pressure sensors, the misters, the board programming, EV. All of these things that work together to protect that unit. So if we just try to charge on the fly, all we're really doing is doing what? Throwing it into protection mode.
Right.
So we're not getting accurate readings. We're not getting accurate information. That's why we need to weigh the charge in so that we know that machine's got the proper charge.
People like to talk about, hey, don't put the gauges on it. I'm here to tell you, put the gauges on it. But that being said, in cool mode, what are we looking for? Delta T from the supply and return, 20 to 25 degrees. So that's a good thing that you can check relatively easy without getting the gauges out to know that it's in a good spot with your charge. And then if you do have Delta T that's way outside of parameters, high or low, because high is bad too, right?
Right.
So high or low, then we need to go ahead, hook the gauges up, check the charge, see where we're at. So
we would agree to disagree within our own organization. I disagree in that you don't always have to hook gauges up.
That's true.
Not if you have a MultiPRO unit. All you need is a service code.
You're right.
mess with the charge.
You're right.
So I can not only get the pressures, I can also get all the temperatures of the indoor coil, outdoor coil, discharge temp. There's a whole wealth of information, but you can also get that same information if we use a mini split service tool.
Correct.
So if you really don't want to put gauges on, we have the tools available that will keep you from having to put gauges on there for every time you go out to do preventive maintenance and stuff like that.
Very
Then you
true.
can make your determinations on that, whether or not you need to put gauges on. So, but you're right. You know, if you don't have that tool, yeah, put a gauge on it. Make sure it ain't flat. And what's one of the biggest things that we will tell guys to do before they even turn the unit on if they suspect?
What's the standing pressure?
Standing pressure. That unit
It's a
ain't been
good
on for
indication of where we're at.
45 minutes.
Yeah,
You hook the gauge up to it, it should be equal to your outdoor ambient temperature.
right.
It's not, if it's significantly lower than that, good possibility that unit's low on charge. Hey, Suze, you want to throw anything on that, or listen, James didn't get to introduce him yet. Maybe we need James to do that.
Yeah, we can do that. This is our newest team member, Jesus Fraga. He was a contractor last week. So everybody, Jesus Fraga. He's
Welcome to the team, Jesus.
Hey, nice to finally be aboard. So, but yeah, I do have a couple of things to add on that. As far as adding or checking charge in a unit, especially when you're doing maintenance, people go back and forth whether it's necessary to do so or not. But those are two good points. You always want to verify that there is standing pressure in the system. But if there's other means as to where you don't have to go and connect, well, that's great too, because you also don't want to lose any refrigerant, as you're coming on and off of the port. So I can see how it's just good to be mindful on both sides of the wheel.
I guess the difference is, were you going out there because there's a problem, or are you going out there just for maintenance?
That's true, yeah.
Just
So
going
I
out
guess
for maintenance, and they got no issues. I wouldn't throw gauges on there without running preliminary checks first.
Yeah.
Like Daniel was talking about, Delta T, cooling mode. If I got 25 degree Delta T, I don't need to be putting gauges on that machine. But if it's, 10 degree Delta T, I need to put a gauge on there.
yeah, maybe a problem there. Yeah, I agree.
So the argument can be made both ways. But the bottom line is that what really started us into this whole discussion is charging versus single speed
Versus inverter.
Inverter.
Right.
We cannot tell you how to charge that unit just by turning the machine on and just adding charge and having a specific pressure or a specific temperature because of the fact that
Or a charging chart. I get that question a lot. People will ask for a charging chart.
There's no set speed to that compressor.
Right.
And that has to have a set speed in order for you to get that charge properly. So, and they don't give us the ability to do that. And I don't know any truly inverter-driven equipment manufacturer out there that gives you the ability to lock the speed and get the charging parameters behind it.
Right.
Yeah, that's I think you got it all covered. It's about everything I could think of as far as that goes. Yeah, I mean, I would say the one thing to remember is it is still an air conditioner, right? I know that we can have the tendency to walk up to something we're maybe not that familiar with and just assume it must be an electronic problem or something like that. I don't know how many times I took a tech support call where it was completely empty, they
yeah.
and then they, depending on who they're calling, if they call another manufacturer, they might wait 3 hours while listening to some terrible hold music. Finally get somebody and it's like, well, do you have any refrigerant in it? Oh, I was told not to hook up gauges to it. Don't do that.
I've heard that many times. I was waiting on you.
Right. You're there for a problem. You spent some real money on those gauges. You might have the fancy digital ones or whatever. I don't have any of those. But you might have the fancy digital. Just hook them up, You might have the Bluetooth ones or whatever that play music or something. Hook them up, right?
Well, James, you made a great point there. I call it, I gave a new nickname for it. It's called inverter voodoo. It's not inverter voodoo. It's an air conditioner. So the basic principles behind an inverter-driven unit is the differences are not any different.
Right.
In other words, the basic refrigeration cycle is still there. You still have a metering device, you still have an indoor coil, you still have an outdoor coil, and you still have a compressor. So if you're, in the grand scheme of things, in air conditioning, we've always looked at around a 40-degree evaporator temperature. Well, if you hook that thing up and it's only running at 20-degree evaporator temperature, that's kind of a red flag.
Yeah.
Same with your condensing temperature. You know, you still are you got to be above ambient temperature outside in order to reheat.
And that's what we were doing yesterday. Looking at the evaporator temperature. We ran into a little bit of a pickle. But we made it work, so all's well.
We learned that we forgot about the fact that when equipment comes by airplane,
You can't send it charged.
But contrary to popular belief, there is some R32 around.
And we found it.
And we found it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, guys. Be sure to submit your questions or comments using the question mark at the right of the screen. Looks like we do have some good questions coming in, but keep them coming. It's really what adds the most value to our videos. Because I'm not going to give credit, to Greg or Daniel. But anyway, I'm going to shift focus. We're going to start a new segment called Stay Heated or Chill Out. This is where we can get to talk about things that really grind our gears. And then we'll talk about whether or not they should chill out or just, or stay heated. There's some things that are really important, but there's also some things that maybe you just, I don't know, care a little too much about. All right. So when I think about this, we're going to go ahead and do Stay Heated or Chill Out. When I think about this, of all people I can think of that probably gets their gears ground the most, and I might need to tell them to chill out more than I say stay heated, it's going to be Greg. So I'm going to go to you. Seems like you got some things to cover there, Greg. Now, we're not going to make this like a 3-hour therapy session or anything, but have at it, man. Go ahead and.
Yeah, I don't want to make anybody mad.
Come on. What you got, Greg?
I think we were talking about having the right tools for the job, right?
You do have to have the right tools for the job. But let's be real. One of my pet peeves is it's about heat pumps. And the GREE FLEXX, I can go back to that inverter voodoo thing, that they think it's magically a whole new system. So it just kind of grinds my gears a little bit that it's still a heat pump. So the way you wire that heat pump, the way you wire auxiliary heat, it ain't any different than any other heat pump out there. And we get phone calls in and guys ask questions about the wiring to it, and it's really not any different than any other heat pump I've ever hooked up. The only difference to it is we have a D terminal on the indoor unit that that gives us one ability that I've never seen another heat pump do, which is when it goes into defrost, we can send the defrost signal from the outdoor unit to the indoor unit, shut down the blower, provided electric heat's not on. So that we're not blowing cold air while we're in defrost, because defrost is actually units running in cooling mode.
Now, just to clarify, if you're not that familiar with the FLEXX, it is the 24-volt product. So it's controlled by 24 volts.
Anyway, but it's not any different than any other heat, 24-volt driven heat pump. The GREE FLEXX is to replace unitary product.
Correct.
It is a 1-to-1 system. It is 24-volt hookup. It doesn't wire any different than any other heat pump out there. The only difference is that we have the ability to shut down the blower during defrost, provided we're not bringing on electric heat.
Right.
So it just, I get, myself says a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. It's like, it's not new. It's new in the condenser as far as inverter technology and how well that unit heats in heating mode. But wiring of it is no different than any other heat pump. So in a way, I say it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, but more of it's just, getting the word out there to people understand that it's not any different than any other heat pump. Other than the fact, as far as wiring goes, it is different than any other heat pump out there because it's got
it has exceptional heating capability. So since we're about throwing people under the bus, I'll throw James under the bus. I think he's got a little pet peeve himself about everybody trying to make the MultiPRO FLEXX unit.
Oh, okay. All right. That's what we're gonna do then. All right. Well, yeah, so okay, so when it comes to the FLEXX system, right? I mean, it is an inverter driven system, but there's a handful of features that people have requested that like a variable speed blower with multi-tap and all that, among other things. Being able to do multiple zones on it, being able to put a wall mount on it, just all kinds of stuff, that we get requested. And I'm trying to not get really worked up. But we currently offer that, and it is a MultiPRO system, that gives you exceptional heating performance, much better than the FLEXX if you choose an ultra heat. It gives you a fully variable speed motor, 5 speeds plus a turbo speed. You can use up to 10 indoor units on it. It is a communicating system, but you can actually get the actual true zoning out of it, So if you're wanting to use the FLEXX, and then you start adding a zoning damper kit and trying to figure out a way with like relays to speed up and slow down the blower and all kinds of other stuff, you could save a lot of time and energy and money using a MultiPRO instead. I'm just going to leave it at that. Feel like we might have to have an after-hour show if I keep going. But go ahead.
Well, James, I would never throw you under the bus without being able to add on to it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So right behind us, and this is kind of a little plug for the next couple Tech 90s coming up. If you're not familiar, so this is the new GREE dual fuel coil. So along with the one thing we can step one further than the FLEXX. The FLEXX you can do dual fuel now.
Correct.
But the FLEXX cannot do dual fuel and have a wall mount or cassette. That's coming. So the next couple of Tech 90s are going to be talking about our new dual fuel coil option with MultiPRO. So
you're telling me that we'll be able to have 100% heating down to -22, but also have a gas furnace backup?
Yes, sir.
Oh, we can save money in the summer and the winter?
Sir.
All right. That's the limit to my salesy stuff today.
Well, personally, I feel that James just needs to chill out.
Okay. All right.
But I get to stay heated.
But Greg, he gets to stay heated because I've had a lot of calls about 24-volt control hookup in tech support. And honestly, it surprised me because, I always gave people the benefit of the doubt. It's an inverter system. It's communicating. A lot of guys aren't familiar with it or haven't seen it yet, or they just walked up to their first inverter system and they're a little confused. But when people call me on the 24-volt control hookup, it makes me think about what is happening to training. Like, for me, that's something you should get in technical school.
I agree with you.
That should be one of the first things. Now, I didn't learn that specifically in technical school because I already knew it, because I was taught a great deal before I went to technical school. But it's a little bit confusing to me. So I think you can stay heated on that. But
tying in electric heat and a FLEXX heat pump is no different than tying in a electric air handler with any other heat pump.
And
but you're right. That is something you should be learning in trade school.
Yes.
How auxiliary heat works, how emergency heat works, how the heat pump works, all that ties together and it should be wired properly. That should be taught in tech school.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing to note, a very valid question is O or B on the GREE.
B is GREE.
That's right.
B is GREE. So we energize in heat mode. Reverse valve energizes in heat mode on the GREE unit.
I got you. So what terminal it energizes on a MultiPRO?
On a MultiPRO?
Yeah.
Depends.
Right.
The dual fuel coil, it's going to be
B.
Hey, how about that? Well, okay, so I'm supposed to remind everybody to they can submit a vote to either stay heated or chill out. We'll just leave that on Greg's thing, talking about wiring heat pumps. So if you think that Greg should just chill out, go ahead and vote. If you think he should stay heated, go ahead and vote, and maybe we'll talk about it again next episode. All right. While those votes are coming in, we're going to go ahead and run our latest installment of our Versus series.
Welcome back to our Versus series, where we break down the big topics in the HVAC world. Today, we're breaking down a major shift in the HVAC industry, moving from traditional refrigerants to A2L refrigerants. You might have heard about A2Ls in the news, or maybe it's come up in conversation. But what does this actually mean for you? Let's start with the basics. Why the shift? For decades, traditional refrigerants like R32 and R410A have been industry standards. They've done the job well, but they come with a hefty environmental cost. High global warming potential, or GWP, and ozone-depleting characteristics have led to stricter regulations worldwide. That's where A2L refrigerants come in. These new refrigerants like R32 are designed to be more eco-friendly, with much lower GWP. Governments and environmental bodies are pushing for these changes, and that means the entire HVAC industry must adapt. So, what does this mean if you're a homeowner? For starters, traditional refrigerants aren't the most efficient, and the move to R32 offers much greater efficiency. This could mean lower energy bills and a smaller carbon footprint. One important thing to note, however, these new refrigerants are classified as mildly flammable. Don't let that term scare you. Mildly flammable doesn't mean your system will catch fire, but it does mean there are new safety protocols in place. Homes with older systems might need an upgrade to accommodate these refrigerants, and that could mean additional costs. Now, if you're a contractor or technician, handling these refrigerants requires some specific training. However, the impact on contractors is expected to be mild. While there is a learning curve and the need for some new tools, the benefits of being at the forefront of this technology can outweigh these initial challenges. The days of just swapping out refrigerants without a second thought are over, but the transition is manageable. There are also cost implications and the issue of availability. Units containing traditional refrigerants are being phased out, although as of right now there is plenty of inventory and can be sold until January 2027. On the flip side, A2L refrigerants are being ramped up in production, which means prices could stabilize or even decrease over time. So, if you're budgeting for future maintenance or installations, consider that upfront costs for A2L systems might be offset by longer-term savings and better availability. While units containing traditional refrigerants are still available, both will still be an upgrade, and traditional refrigerant will be available for many years to support these systems. So, what does this shift to A2L refrigerants mean for you? If you're a homeowner, it means better efficiency and environmental benefits, but also potential upgrades and costs. For contractors, it's a call to adapt, learn, and lead in this new era of HVAC. This isn't just a trend. It's a transformation of how we think about cooling our homes and buildings. To wrap things up, it's important to remember staying informed is key. We'll keep bringing you the latest updates as the industry evolves. So make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you don't miss out on any future topics. Thanks for watching, and at GREE, we're by your side.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the questions that have come in, and there are absolutely a ton of them. So let's go through a couple things. I did get a couple questions about registration as far as the products are concerned. And from what I understand, I mean, product registration, and Daniel can correct me if I'm wrong, but product registration really applies if we're talking about our 10-year warranty through the GREE Select Dealer program. But, product registration for anything outside of that, like commercial jobs or some of the other products that aren't applicable to that product registration, they don't need to register anything. Is that correct?
Correct. It does not activate or affect warranty for the standard registration that you can do on the greecomfort.com website.
I got you.
Okay. No gain.
There's no gain. It is helpful. It puts your serial number in the system so we can, pull it up and see, who your installer was, things like that.
I got you. Does it not give you like a fancy certificate or something like that?
I believe it does give you a confirmation over email that yes, it was registered. But the true benefit to registration, which of course, is only applicable according to your local state laws and things like that, is through the GREE Select Dealer registration.
I gotcha. Okay. I got another question. Is there any difference between a GREE? I would assume it's going to be talking about a FLEXX, and I guess a brand that looks like it or something like that. I'll go ahead and take that. There is only one GREE within the United States. In terms of support, that would be where the real difference is made. You might be able to buy something out of the, back of some place in the middle of nowhere or something like that, right? But in terms of support, I mean, we absolutely are the experts when it comes to this equipment. We can support you, explain it, that kind of thing. If you buy something online, you may not get that support, right? Now we are focused on providing support for contractors, and we support contractors. We support distributors who sell to contractors. That's what we do. I can't speak for the off brands or whatever that are sold elsewhere. Can't help there. Is there anything you guys would like to add on that?
No, I think we're good. I think we
Right.
covered it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess one thing I can add to it to make it simple. So if you call with another branded piece of equipment, we're not going to be any help to you.
Right.
Because we can't pull the service manuals.
We don't
can't
know the
pull
model
submittals,
numbers.
We don't know the model numbers. And then people get really irritated with us when we tell them we don't sell or support that product. But bottom line is I can't support it even if I wanted to because I can't pull up any literature to support it.
Correct.
So
Right. And that applies to a lot of things. I mean, I can go online right now and purchase like a package unit, for example, and having worked for other manufacturers, we would get those calls too, and it's contractor focused, it's distributor focused. That's who we support. So whatever you think you might be, or whatever someone thinks they might be saving in the short term, they're eventually going to pay for in the long run. And I'm pretty sure every contractor that's listening to this right now knows exactly what I'm talking about there. Let's see here. One question was, can you summarize the charging of inverter or single speed charge procedure? I mean, basically the summarization there is if it's an inverter driven variable speed system, you're going to be weighing that in. That's the only way to prove without a doubt that you have enough refrigerant to meet the needs of any day, basically. If I was looking at, like we covered this earlier, but if I was looking at normal pressures, normal temperatures and something today, and it gets a bit hotter today or tomorrow, a little bit colder tomorrow or something like that, it may not be running correctly. And if you suspect a leak, you're supposed to be finding that leak anyway.
when in doubt, take it out.
Greg's a big fan of rhyming, and that works. When in doubt, take it out. Yeah. I actually had somebody one time called me, in the morning, and started telling me their temperatures and pressures and all that. And I said, hey, you know what? You'd be better off if you just pull it out. And this was on a larger system. It'd be better if you just go ahead and do that. He called me later on that afternoon. He kept adding refrigerant, taking out refrigerant, adding refrigerant, taking out refrigerant, letting it run for 30 minutes at a time, stuff like that. And he called me later on that afternoon and said, I should have just taken this out to begin with.
Correct.
With today's recovery machines, it's not that hard to pull the charge back out.
Right.
And by law, as long as you recover it into a clean tank, you can reuse that refrigerant in that same system.
Right.
So, if you're trying to pinch a few pennies by not wasting refrigerant, just get a clean tank. Use a clean recovery tank, an empty recovery tank.
Use that as your recovery.
Make sure it's dehydrated, and use that as your tank. And you can absolutely use that refrigerant again. Most people will just put virgin refrigerant back in.
Right.
But
I believe it has to be on the same system.
I did say that. Same system.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right.
Yes,
Just make sure. All right. Reminds me, I need to go get a recovery machine. Due for an upgrade. Let's see here. Got another charge question. Does the quantity of refrigerant get affected when you use the unit in a high ambient climate? And that would be no. We do not increase or decrease charge based on ambient conditions.
And you can't decrease the refrigerant because you didn't use a 10-foot line.
Yeah, correct. Hey, I actually I've got a story for that. All right. Had a job at my last job. We had a job where they said that they would have to remove refrigerant part of the year and then add the refrigerant back the other part of the year. Right. And it turns out, it was a 3-ton mini split. And I can tell you, every time I'm told that they got a 3-ton mini split, I always ask what it's on. Just from 16 years of mini split troubleshooting, when it gets to 3 tons, I always ask what it's on, because there's applications where that's perfectly fine, but those applications can be few and far between, right?
Are you trying to insinuate that 3 ton is a little big for 500 square feet?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. This was on a guard shack at a landfill.
Oh, wow.
This was at the previous manufacturer, but anyway, it was a 3-ton mini split on a guard shack at a landfill, and what they did was reduce the capacity one part of the year and get that capacity back on the other part of the year. That was their solution, instead of it being a 3-ton on a guard shack. I said, well, I mean, you can open the door and open all the windows. That might help,
I'm not sure you even got 80 square feet there.
No, probably not. No, like I said, just count the square feet outside the guard shack as long as you open the windows and the doors, right?
There you go.
Let's see here. So how exactly do you charge a MultiPRO with 4 heads?
Same way.
Well, how do we go about calculating that, Greg?
Well, we can either use System Builder on GREEcomfort.com, or you can go to GREEcomfort.com and you can download the
Selection software.
selection software. Sorry, I didn't have the, I lost it off the tip of my tongue. Thank you. Either way, once you punch in the whole system, it'll calculate your entire charge. You will need to know your line sets, lengths between the outdoor unit, your first Y branch, and then additional units or header to the indoor units.
Right.
You have those dimensions. It will actually it'll tell you what size pipe on the selection software. It'll tell you what size pipe to use and what your total additional charge is.
Right. I got you. Also, the installation manual spells it out as well. If you stuck on the job site or something, it gives you how much quarter you got, how much 3/8 you got, and a calculation for each one of those. You add them up, and that's what you add to the system.
And your pipe sizes for your indoor units will be the same size as the indoor unit until we exceed 50 feet.
That's right. Right. So we try to give some tools like the system builder on GREEcomfort.com that really assist in doing that. Does the math for you, which is pretty nice. Excuse me. All right, so we're going to run a short clip, and we'll get back to we'll come back with results to the stay heated or chill out. So let's run that video.
Hi, Greg with GREE. I want to show you on the MultiPRO systems, since they auto address, how on for example, a wall mount, you can change which unit is the master indoor unit. Because remember, the master indoor unit is what controls your mode. There is no mode conflict with MultiPRO. All right, in order to set the indoor unit to be the master, first thing we need to do is set the mode to fan. So I got the remote set to fan mode. Next thing we're going to do is use the up key to set the temperature to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Once we got it set to 86 degrees Fahrenheit and in fan mode, then we're going to do the up and down arrow keys, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And just keep doing that till you see the indoor unit say UC. Once it says UC, now you've just commanded that indoor unit to be the master indoor unit. All right, so in order to change this unit to being the master unit, you set the mode to fan, and then you set the temperature to 86 degrees. As you can see, right there, it's 86 degrees. Now we're going to hit up, down, up, down, until it says UC. like that. Once it says UC like that, now that has become the master indoor unit. Hope that helps you out with multi-zone systems. And remember, with GREE, we're always by your side.
All right. No, I think that was a good clip. That's for setting the master or main zone on a GREE multi-zone system or MultiPRO system. All right. So now we're going to take a look at the results from the stay heated or chilled out segment. And let's see what that is. I mean, I voted to stay heated. Jesus said stay heated. And Daniel also said that Greg should stay heated about 24-volt wiring on a FLEXX system, right? All right. It's obviously a really important thing. It looks like we got, how many fires are we going to have on there? All right. Looks like we got 4 flames. We've got all the burners going. So
he's really heated.
You'll never get a chill from me.
all right. Okay. So next, let's take a look at a few comments that we had on the YouTube channel at GREE Comfort. Let's take a look. On the FLEXX dual fuel wiring video, it says, Marco says, I have a question regarding the float switch wiring. When you say don't break R wire because it won't shut the unit down, can you expand on that? I would think breaking R would kill power to the stat, shutting it all down. No?
That's a good question.
So, yeah, that's a fair question.
Yeah.
So it depends on where you're breaking R.
Correct.
I guess I didn't clarify it good enough. What I meant was do not break R to the outdoor unit. If you break R to the outdoor unit, the unit will not shut down.
Correct.
But yes, if you break R to the thermostat, you're obviously going to lose your call and the unit will shut down.
But the easiest way to train it is just break Y.
The easiest way to train it is break
and that
Y.
way we don't end up with the unit continuing to run and continuing to produce water.
I don't like breaking R to the thermostat because it makes the homeowner's thermostat go completely dead.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather break Y so that they know, okay, the heat pump's not working, or okay, it's not working in heating mode or cooling mode, but the thermostat's just not going to completely blank, because then
Right.
it relates it to, could be a power issue.
Right.
You know, breaker tripped or something like that. If it's running but not doing anything in just the outdoor unit, now we've segmented it down. That's why I like the idea of just breaking Y to the outdoor unit, shut it down.
Right. Well, I can't help but to agree. You guys know more than I do. So, next we have a question from Century FE74 on the R454B Misnometer. I guess this was in terms of when we were talking about our comparisons between the two A2L refrigerants. He says that R454B will probably be banned in the future due to the PFAS forever chemicals in the R1234YF part of it. R32 is pure and doesn't have forever chemicals in it, much cheaper to since patents have expired. Wow, okay. Well, yes, it is true that other refrigerants, particularly ones that have R1234YF in them, do have PFAS in them, and Europe and also around 19 states are currently in the process of either planning on banning or talking about banning chemicals just like it as far as PFAS goes. There may be some arguments against it being in a sealed system, but then again, we're also talking about how it might affect the global warming potential and all that. So I mean, obviously, if we're talking about global warming potential, we're talking about refrigerant being released. Therefore, if we're talking about refrigerant being released, we might not want PFAS being in those refrigerants.
So when that happens,
yep.
Remember, the GREE is using R32. We'll have equipment for you.
Right, that is true. Now, one thing I will say, as far as the two refrigerants that are being offered currently, only one of them has been used for 15 years. Only one of them isn't, a blend. Only one of them doesn't have active patents that, somebody is getting paid on. It's being used globally currently. So there are many, many suppliers of R32, which keeps prices lower. R32 is used globally, and that's where most of the manufacturers from a global standpoint already headed that, or have already headed that direction. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'll say on that. There's maybe we'll talk about the heated or chill out segment next go around on that, but and we'll bring Justin in so he can be heated.
So Daniel, we can add to that just to kind of ward off a question before it comes.
What's that?
With our experience with an R32 jug yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it clearly said on the box what?
I don't remember.
Flip it upside down to charge.
It did say flip it upside down, and you don't have to.
And you don't have to, because R32 is not a blend.
Right.
So you can pull off the top of the tank, you can flip it upside down, pull liquid off the bottom of the tank. It doesn't make any difference. You're not changing the composition of the refrigerant.
Right.
But it is clearly marked on the box that it says flip upside down to charge. So
yeah, and in reference to those single speed systems, since this might be just our charging episode, I suppose. If you're talking about the single speed systems or the 2-speed systems where you might be able to top it off, for example, you can top it off with R32, right? Because it is a single component system. I mean, there's a lot of benefits there. I mean, the fact of the matter is there's already millions of units that use R32. There are probably a handful that use any other one, that other one that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So, as far as when people ask why, I would ask, you to ask why to the other folks that are trying to sell you on something that hasn't been around that long. Next would be from, I'm not going to try to say that username. Concern on the FLEXX installation and troubleshooting video concerning setting eco mode. Does this set a 3 ton to 2.5? Does this mean we set CFM for 2.5 also? Thanks. All right, so I think this was in reference to, if you did determine that you needed a 0.5 ton size, could you use eco mode to at least give you an opportunity to run a little bit longer?
Yes.
Okay, so
I think you could set it for 2.5 tons worth of airflow because it's going to be running economy mode on the outdoor unit. But I think even if you kept it at the 3 ton of operation as far as airflow, I still don't think you're talking about a minimal difference.
Yeah.
In operation.
Yeah, and it actually gives instructions in the service manual or installation manual about how to set those and use the eco mode and the strong mode to give that little difference of 0.5 ton.
Remember, the other thing too that I always remind everybody too is, these things do an acceptable job of protecting themselves. Mm-hmm. So if we do set it for 2.5 ton, and we had high static against it, it's the worst that's going to happen is you're going to have an air code pop up and with something to address. It's not going to damage the machine. So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, we aren't relying on like a low pressure switch, for example. Now, there are many units out there that don't have a low pressure switch at all. And the unit will absolutely run with nothing in it. Until that overload trips and keeps tripping and keeps tripping. And that's actually another thing that I don't think we talk about enough is the fact that our overloads are external. So, you trip an overload enough, eventually they want to give up. Well, yeah, sure, you're replacing the overload on top of the compressor, but you don't have a bad compressor now because of it.
Right.
You're switching the overload. I mean, I remember out there, like, with a garden hose trying to get that compressor to cool off, and beating on it with a hammer to see if I can get that overload to go back in. So that I could put refrigerant back in it, or maybe it's because the coil was dirty or the filters were, they change them every month, right? You always check the trash can and you can see that filter they changed, right? Every month, right? Before you get called out.
Or maybe it don't have an overload at all.
Yeah.
What was that?
So maybe it don't have an overload at all.
Yeah.
Like the FLEXX. The FLEXX doesn't have an overload. The inverter board is the overload.
Right. So in that case, we're talking about, we're not relying on something that's internal to the compressor.
Correct.
What you'll notice when you open up one of these units, no matter which one that you choose, even the ones that go in ultra heat, you got the solenoids and the EVs and all the rest of that. You're talking about something external to the compressor. There are compressor manufacturers out there that have come up with all kinds of different ways to try to do a regular compressor, but speed it up, slow it down, or reduce the amount of refrigerant flow that it's sending into the system, that kind of thing. And unfortunately, a lot of those things are internal to that compressor. They put that in a hermetically sealed, crankcase, and there's nothing you can do to fix that. Once that component goes out, so they're adding additional components that you can't do anything with.
Right. So if it fails, your compressor's failed.
Yeah, if one of those little things fails, it's done. Whether that's a 2-speed compressor or like some kind of weird inverter hybrid type of compressor that I've recently seen. They're adding more components, moving components, operating components within a hermetically sealed chamber. I'd rather replace the board than have to swap out a whole compressor every single time. That also makes compressors a lot more expensive too. Right.
Well, especially if you want to take it one step further and compare it to a 2-stage compressor. Top of that scroll plate's got a turn. I can't think of the name of it on the top of my head, but
yeah,
it's another mechanical part that could fail.
Right.
In a scroll compressor. Right.
When
what we're doing with scroll compressor or rotary compressor with inverter-driven units, we're simply just slowing it down or speeding it up.
Right.
So your mechanical failure rate in there's less because you don't have other mechanical devices in there that have to, give you your first and second stage. You don't have to worry about that plates turning.
What's the first thing to go in your car? Transmission.
Right. Because of all the clutches and everything else.
So if you don't have a transmission in your hermetically sealed compressor.
Right.
Right. And what's kind of insane to me, at least, if I'm going to nerd out for a minute, is if you've got something that is effectively just a solenoid, that could leave the compressor, go through a solenoid, and then come back into the compressor. Because, that's effectively what we've got, with our ultra heat or our hot gas bypass or, many of the other, features that we've got in the product. It's a simple solenoid, or just
it's
a simple
solenoid that we have a very low failure rate on.
Right.
Same with the EEVs. We don't have a high failure rate. Those EEVs, our pressure switches, everything in these machines, being all side discharge, are housed up inside the unit. So your pressure switches are not getting weather treated, and hammered on by the weather.
And transducers
EEVs are
aren't
not
out in
getting
the weather.
hammered. The pressure transducers aren't out in the weather. Everything's enclosed. Whether it's an EEV on an indoor or an outdoor, it's still accessible, but not weather beaten. So, and I've seen my fair share of EV failures on units where the EV it is exposed to the weather.
Right.
And typically has failures, and it's usually failures because of moisture infiltration. And it's moisture infiltration from the elements, not from the machine design.
Right.
So the dependability is there.
Right. So we had a follow-up question to the MultiPRO charging question on the four heads, if you recall. It said, is there a charge in the MultiPRO condenser? Yes, the MultiPRO condenser has refrigerant.
Yes.
But depending on the model, right? Some are not, and of course it depends on the model, right? But some are not charged for any length of line set at all. And some of those models are charged for 65 feet. And I believe the delineation, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but the standard MultiPRO, the standard heating MultiPRO is charged for 0 feet, while the Ultra Heat is charged for 65 feet. Is that correct?
The Ultra Heat B revision.
Oh, okay. All right. So
the new Ultra Heat, that's the VV in the model number.
Right.
That unit is not charged for any refrigerant lines inside at all or indoor equipment.
I got you. So if you have any indoor units at all, you're going to be adding refrigerant to the outlet.
Right.
Okay, or to the system. All right, gotcha. So all current product is 0 feet. Okay.
Yep.
On MultiPRO. All right. When does GREE plan to start accepting R32 orders? Okay. Well, we are taking some orders for project specific, but we feel like our plan is that we will begin having R32 equipment available probably late Q1 of next year. But that is also up to our customers. You know, if you buy a bunch of the 410A equipment, then we might move quicker toward R32. But you know, in many cases, we're going to have plenty of 410A equipment to get us through most of next year as well. So if you have projects, we can get you R32 pricing. But as far as like over the counter, that kind of thing, that's not going to be anytime soon.
And if you join us in our live broadcast tomorrow, we're going to talk more about the A2L equipment,
Yes.
where sensors are located. We even have one R32 single zone mini split we installed yesterday that's functional in our lab. So if you want to learn more about A2L and the R32 equipment that GREE is going to be offering, tune in tomorrow. We'll be happy to share.
Right. Another follow-up question on that. What's the last day of R410A order acceptance? I believe that's in reference to when we will accept R410A orders. That is, you know, basically the regulation says that we effectively have to stop accepting those December 31st of next year. All right. For 5 ton and down, because I mean, we can accept 410A. Now, if you're talking about us submitting orders with the factory for 410A, given the fact that we can't import after December 31st, that date has already passed. So if you wanted us to order more 410A equipment from the factory, that day is already gone. The next question that I've got is a FLEXX Eco question. What's the purpose for the air handlers to have one brazed port and one flare port connection?
I think that's simply how GREE did it.
I agree.
Right. So it is similar to the compression fittings that used to be used on the liquid line, correct?
Right.
Correct.
So that you don't have to braze that particular area.
So you don't have to braze right there. That's where our, you know, our metering device is just on the other side, right?
Right.
So that's an attempt to keep the metering device from getting cooked, right?
Yeah.
So instead of trying to use some kind of, you know, proprietary compression fitting, something like that, we just use the flare connection that most of our customers are already, you know, familiar with. Let's see here. We've got quite a long question here. Okay, this is in reference to maintenance. Let's see here. Talking about filters, drain lines, cleaning filters. Let's see here. We all know customers. We know customers will never clean their filters every month on mini splits. I'm not going to go around cleaning filters. I want to install a system and get back about 2 years later to inspect. That's it. A better filter and bigger drain line would make my life easier. Okay, I do agree that we want to make lives easier, but it seems like 2 years is probably quite a long time for maintenance for air conditioning equipment, right?
I've never known any manufacturer to not recommend at least a 1-year annual maintenance checkup, if not twice a year annual maintenance checkup. And I can't see us going in any other direction. You know, it is a good idea that preventative maintenance plans are sold, done, and you go back to the homeowner's house to make sure they're caring for the equipment properly.
And you know, and the good side of that is
head
for
off
the contractor
before they
for the contractor that sells, right? Maintenance plans is a big part of the business.
Yep.
And it's not just because, you know, they don't want to change their filter. Like we were talking about checking the charge, you know, that's one of those things you'd want to check that delta T and do. And, you know, maybe I think it's perfectly fine to do it once a year.
check electrical connections, make sure you got all
make
those
sure
connections.
yeah.
Make sure you don't have mice getting into the unit and chowing on the wires. You know, it all needs to be. You change the oil on your car.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you do the maintenance on your HVAC equipment?
Yeah.
So,
right. I mean, it's an interesting point. I mean, we know that customers don't always do that. We know that homeowners don't always change their filter like they're supposed to and all the rest of that. You know, and in some cases, we are what keeps their air conditioner going. But that applies to every air conditioning system. So again, this is still just an air conditioner. If you don't have airflow, you don't have air conditioning. That's just the way it goes.
Yep.
Now, it was brought up that in areas with really high humidity, you get a bunch of gunk in it, and it stops up the drain lines, that kind of thing. I will say, taking a look at the environment that the system's installed in, if it is a dirty environment, I'm not judging at all. But let's say it's a dirty environment. I've dealt with units that were like in VFWs, where they let them smoke at the bar and they were just dripping nicotine. I've seen it. Or kitchens, that kind of thing. They're covered in grease and all the rest of that. They're going to require more maintenance than systems that aren't installed in areas like that. It's just the way it is. There's all kinds of third-party products offered out there. They've got drain pan tabs specifically made for mini splits. They're like little strips, that can prevent some of that gunk buildup. Recently got a video, and we'll play that for you probably on the next episode. But it was people using these little sprayers to clean the blower wheels out, and they purchased all their stuff on your favorite internet retailer to do the work on that. But there's just a unit wrap that had a funnel on the bottom of it, and they sprayed this thing out, and it said it took them 20 minutes. Well, how much money can you make in that 20 minutes, right? And yeah, I think we should drive that home. Preventive maintenance is something that it's an additional revenue stream that we can't forget. If somebody doesn't want to pay for that and they call you a year later and you're there to clean stuff, charge them accordingly.
So, Jesus, please chime in. You were just a contractor last week.
Yeah, last week. Yeah, a couple days ago.
You just literally came out of the field. So, what's your
Yeah,
thought
no,
on
I agree on the maintenance, especially for the contractor. The last thing you want is to be called out. It's usually on a holiday, for stuff that you could have gotten on a maintenance. If you reached out to the customer and explained how everything works and, pretty much what you would do on each maintenance visit. So yes, maintenance is a huge deal, especially for any, not even VRF, just any air conditioning system, because chances are, I mean, it needs it. And like we were saying, at least once a year, but if you can, twice, and depending on the environment, it could need more. Just depending.
And then one last thing, James, we can't forget that, if you do a ductwork properly, like on a MultiPRO system, with an air handler, there's no reason why they can't use a media filter with it, as long as they're sizing their ductwork properly and everything and accounting for that static pressure drop across that filter. And then there's no reason why on the ducted units, we also have better filters cabinet that can be mounted on the back of those too, for better filtration than what comes from the factory as well. So the only ones that we really don't have a better offering for, correct me if I'm wrong, would be wall mounts and cassettes.
Right. Yeah, that's actually something I discussed that with the factory yesterday about an add-on filter that maybe we could set on top. Hopefully it'll look good, but it's just adding more to the wall mounts. So, it's something to keep in mind. No, I've had some experience in these dirty job sites. One was no joke, was like a chicken feed or dog food factory. I can't remember exactly, but that's exactly what they did, was use a ducted unit. And then they built a return box where the entire bottom of the return box, because it's a horizontal application, the entire bottom was a filter rack. Because they knew, it was going to be dirty. They were going to be changing them all the time. They put big, heavy filters on it, but used as much area as they could get away with to prevent it from having a lot of static pressure loss. And, it worked it's still working now. I don't know how many years it's been, but, it's still running.
As long as you're sizing for it, you can do it.
That's right.
Right. Let's see here. We had somebody say they want a GREE orange shirt. How do I get one? We're currently taking applications. That is our friend Sean. We're taking applications, Sean, so you can go ahead and apply. We'll get you an orange shirt. But let's see here. Got another question. Let's see. Multi-GEN2 compatibility question. Let's see. Charts online indicate the current indoor models operate with certain older multi-condensers, but how about previous wall-mounted indoor units like VIR-XX, instead of 3 VIR? Is there a chart showing compatibility with the current Multi-Gen 2 EO model series condensers? Can you confirm backwards compatibility of the current EO models when applications require condenser replacements for the CO model series? I know that sounds like a lot, but it's a question referencing forward and backwards compatibility with Multi-Gen 2 models. You guys are going to have to answer that.
That's an excellent question, James. So on our website, we've just recently launched a compatibility tool. So you just type in the model number and it will tell you yes, no, give you the options of what could be compatible with that model, forwards and backwards. So all of the possibilities are listed in that tool.
Yep. I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot about it.
It's on, if you go to the top of the page on GREEcomfort.com, and I believe it's under resources, and then it's under the little drop down, and you'll have several different selections, and it's under one of those selections. I don't remember off the top of my head which one it's under.
Because it's brand new.
Yeah.
It literally just launched.
I think it's under support, and then it'll give you the parts lookup tool, the compatibility tool, and then also there is the link to system docs and parts manuals, and so.
Great. No, that's great. Okay. Let's see. Is turbo mode a locked-in mode? So as far as I know, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, if I hit turbo on that remote, I'm going to be running turbo fan until I take turbo off.
You're right.
Yep.
Okay. I use turbo pretty often because I can't leave my air conditioner alone. So, all right. Let's see. Jose says I'm sticking with whoever uses R32. It's the one I want. We're gonna have that as a tagline on the video. That's what Jose said.
I like that.
That's great. I like it.
All right. Let's see. I may have heard wrong. R32 units are available now or January next year. No, pricing on R32 equipment for project-specific, effectively container loads directly from the factory for large projects. You can get that now, or your salesperson can get that information for you. But as far as like a 1-2 mini split order, something like that, no, they're not available right now. Okay, let's see. You guys all do a great job, says Sean. Thank you, Sean. I'll send the money to you. One question I seem to get is when someone undersizes the line set size and wants to use a larger capacity than the line set will support, then wonder if they can still get any warranty if it does not perform. Okay. We may have Sean on the next episode for the heated or chill out.
Heated.
Yeah, right. So basically, I ran the wrong line sets, and I'm wondering if I can use that line set, and whether or not I can get warranty on that line set. What would the answer be on that? Or not warranty on the line set, but warranty using that line set.
I was going to say, James, we're not going to provide any warranty on the line set, but so it needs to be installed according to the installation manual and the specs that was provided with the equipment, because we're not engineers. We don't know how that system is going to perform or how it's going to affect it if we install it incorrectly.
So in other words, what you're saying is we can't promise it's going to work.
Correct.
Right. Well, and if you want more of I guess on the technical side of things, when we're talking about reducing capacity of a system because our line set's too small, it's not only reduction in capacity, right? It also is going to slow down the refrigerant. It's going to slow down the oil that wants to migrate out and go through the indoor unit and come back. If I have smaller line sets, I can't guarantee that the proper amount of oil is coming back. I can't guarantee lubrication of the compressor. We don't know if that's going to fail next year or if that's going to fail 10 years down the road. We don't know. So, when it comes to warranty, we like to warranty things and installations that have been approved, in accordance with the installation manuals. Those have been long tested. When you take them outside of that, you're kind of taking the risk on yourself,
Then if we want to reverse that a little bit, in that when you're in heating mode with any of our units, that larger line, or people like to refer to as the suction line, is now your discharge line.
Correct.
So if your line set is too small, you've effectively just made your discharge line too small.
Right.
So chances are that machine is not going to work properly because of the fact that the discharge line is too small.
Now, on the flip side of that, if you install a line set that's too large, how's that going to affect the system?
Well, then you may not be able to keep your discharge pressure high enough.
There you go.
So either way, the lines are sized by the manufacturer for a reason, and it is for optimum performance. And it goes to both ways. Heating mode as far as your discharge line goes, and as James was just talking about, cooling mode and oil return.
Right.
So we need to really stick with what the proper sizes are. Now, one thing I will point out that I like to talk about is some of it has to do with efficiency too. So if you're talking in multi-zone units, and let's say you were putting a multi-EO in and you were using sapphire heads, typically the sapphire head's going to have a larger line set than if I use a Levo head, because the Levo head don't have as high efficiency.
Right.
So sometimes you can fix your line set problem by it being too small by going to a different indoor unit.
Yeah.
So it's not always just about oil
Good
return
point.
and discharge, but it could also be just the efficiency.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more than one thing that, signifies line set size.
Right. Well, the thing is, the customer's paying for the capacity that they're supposed to get. They're paying for the efficiency that they're supposed to get, and they're paying for the long life of that equipment. That's what they're expecting to get. And I mean, that's what they pay for, right? I mean, are they getting a discount for it and being installed incorrectly? Probably not. Depends on if you're on if you're advertising on, go ahead.
The other thing I seem to run into, and it's been an issue in this trade for a long time, where you got a lot of jobs going in, they're doing rough ends. So they're only getting the piping and stuff like that. They haven't even ordered the equipment yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they go to order the equipment and they find out that's no longer available. And now they're kind of sunk because they already ran all these refrigerant lines. So you need to make sure that order is secured, and you're going to get that equipment before you put in all that piping.
Yep.
If you got to warehouse it, you got to warehouse it. You just, otherwise you're rolling them dice, and it may not be available when you go to order it.
It may not play out.
Or not in stock, whatever the case may be. And we're going through refrigerant transitions now. So that becomes more of a big thing. If you're planning out a whole job and it's spec'd for 410A and you wait too long and now all that's available is R32 equipment and the line set sizes are different, you're in trouble. So a lot more thought process needs to be into when rough ends are going in and having that equipment available when the time comes to actually set equipment.
Yeah. Well, we all four of us have been in the position where we're told by somebody with a complete lack of familiarity just to figure it out. Just figure it out. And unfortunately, we get put in those positions a lot, right? I mean, we all have been. And and when it comes to doing a project with a bunch of houses or a commercial project, something like that, you got people that don't quite understand, and they probably never will, and they're just telling you to figure it out. So unfortunately, you do have to think for them a little bit ahead of time just to protect yourself. We do have one more question to go over. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, there's two questions. All right, we'll cover both of these. All right. Will the stub outlines for the liquid and vapor sides be long enough such that press connections can be easily used? And they listed an example of RLS or Zoom Lock Max press fittings. That is actually something that we have discussed at length for the portions that aren't flare connections. Will they be long enough, like those stub outs, will they be long enough without a swedge, right? Without a
Right.
swedge on it, without that's something that we've talked to the factory a lot about. It seems like these RLS or Zoom Lock Max or other things like it have gotten a lot more common. What are you guys' opinions on doing that? I mean, you think that's something we should really push for, right?
I do.
I believe simply because the contractors that I have spoken to that are a fan of those types of products, the reason they are is because it speeds up the installation process so much for them.
And there's a lot of jobs where otherwise they gotta have a hot work permit.
Right. You're
Mhm.
right.
And they're
So
going to press type fittings because it just takes a
it
lot of the
saves
headache
them.
out of it.
Yeah, it saves
not
that much time.
Dragging a nitrogen tank around, they're not carrying a torch around. Yeah, so we probably do need to push with GREE a little bit more to see if we can't get them just, a little bit longer stub outs so that,
And not pre-swedged so that they can either one
yeah,
they
just get
can
away from the pre-swedged
just
altogether.
get away from pre-swedge, and that way, if they are going to braze it, fine, get a coupling. If they're not, then go ahead and use the whatever product that they're comfortable with.
Yeah, I suppose you could also swedge it yourself if you wanted to.
Yeah, true.
Correct.
Who's got one of those?
It takes one of the steps out of manufacturing, and as a manufacturer, I mean, you got to like it because it's got to make a clean system, far cleaner than what you can guarantee somebody
Very
will
much
use when they
so.
braze. I still see a lot of talk about whether or not nitrogen is a requirement or should be used. And I can't, not anybody that's listening to this, but the guys who aren't, right? The guys that bid against you, those are the ones that aren't using it at all. And with the efficiency ratings and the tolerances and stuff that we're talking about, I mean, trying to eliminate that junk floating around in the system. I mean, like I said before, if I go get an oil change, I expect that they're putting brand new oil in it.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I expect that they're putting brand new oil in it. I mean, what are we taking by not doing that? We're affecting the longevity of the equipment, the performance of the equipment, that kind of thing if we're not using nitrogen. So, you might use it, but your helper might not, right? So if you're using an RLS or a Zoom Lock Max or many other brands out there, that will guarantee that they're not, at least, I mean, it's going to keep the copper oxide out of the system, right?
I,
Oxide.
I can't discredit it at all. I really can. I think it's, a lot of those press fits have become, more and more reliable,
Mm-hmm.
and more people are using them. And yes, it does definitely speeds up the job.
Mm-hmm.
So I got nothing against it. And yeah, we can talk to GREE about that, and get them to start making them stub outs just a hair longer and quit swedging them. It's a great suggestion.
Yeah. And the last question that we've got for today is going to be, it says, well, it's not really a question, I don't guess, but it says line size and replacement, no way but to adapt. Well, all right. I know on a lot of new construction, and I hate to see it, you hate to see it, but, I see a lot of new construction stuff or, existing construction where they've got the line set inside the wall. They got 6 foot of it, 8 foot of it inside the wall. They're running up, that kind of thing. And I've seen pictures of stuff like that, and they go, "Well, we got to use it because there's no way to run this line set other than that." I suspect when people are purchasing a new system, they might be looking for a new system. Maybe not new ductwork, but they're looking for a new system. In my opinion, I would say line set is part of a new system. I don't know how much they're saving by trying to use the existing line set. And if that existing line set's the wrong size, I mean, what are we affecting the longevity of that equipment?
We are.
Most certainly. Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, God knows what's in it, right? What kind of work's been done on it. I've seen people I've worked with people that used, stuff out of a recovery machine, that they might have pulled out of a package unit on a roof somewhere, or, they've got just whatever junk's in it. People throw dyes in it, all kinds of stuff. It's got the oxides in it from God knows when, you name it. And again, I've got this brand new piece of equipment and now I shove a bunch of old stuff in it. What am I, What am I doing to that system? You know, I guess the question comes is, if you lose the job because you're the only one that wanted to replace that line set, I don't know. I guess it becomes a morality question at that point.
Well, I'd like to hear what Jesus thinks
Yeah.
about that. As far as in terms of, do you want to lose the bid or do you want a problem for the next 10 years? What do you think, Jesus?
Yeah, I would say probably lose the bid. As much as it hurts sometimes, but I mean, you want to do what's honest and what the customer, actually needs. So why sell them a brand new system and not look at external factors? Not only the copper line set, go ahead and look at the ductwork and just to see if there's any upgrades or hey, if this is why the previous system just went out because this is what you have here. So this is what it would take, and it's not always gonna be yes, and you just gotta move on to the next one.
That's a good point you bring up, Jesus, with the ductwork. Hey, it doesn't keep the second floor of my home cool in July because, okay, well, let's put you got a 3-ton, let's put a 5-ton in there. And you don't look at the ductwork and you're doing your customer a disfavor.
Well, yeah, I've seen jobs, and I'm sure Jesus could relate to this as well. That you go out there to bid a new job, the old unit's still functioning. It's been in there for 20 years, and then you walk out there and you look at the condenser, and you look in there, and the compressor looks like somebody's running a hose over it because it doesn't have proper airflow. Well, okay, it's never worked right. It may have been working for the last 20 years, but it has never worked properly. It never reached the SEER rating of that machine that it is. And then now you're going to put even a more efficient piece of equipment in because you have no way to not put a more efficient piece of equipment in. If you're changing a unit that's 20 years old, the equipment you're changing it with is more efficient. And it's going to be more subtle to having problems because of lack of airflow than that system that's been barely running for the last 20 years.
We got away with a lot of things with R22, didn't we?
We sure, the industry got away with a whole lot with R22. And you just ain't getting away with it anymore. So do you want to be married to it, or do you want to walk away from the job, or do you just say, look, you talk to your customer. You got to talk to the customer and say, look, the reason I'm doing this is this. And I've been in that situation, and I've talked to homeowners before where I gave a bid and they said, well, you're the only one that said anything you had to do about the ductwork. I go, well, I guess I'm the only one that didn't want to be married to your system because it's never going to work properly.
Right.
And I've also been where that person did use the other company. They didn't do anything in the ductwork, and guess what?
They called you back.
Called back because it still wasn't working.
Yeah.
And it's brand new.
Well, I know it's tough, and I think that, some might say it's easy for us to say, right? But the fact is, like, don't forget us in that calculation, really. I mean, I know maybe you don't care about us at all, but we're affected by the same thing. If you don't get the job and you were bidding a GREE, we don't get the job either.
Fair point.
And,
It is a fair point.
if you want to give them a price on some other brand, cool, man, have at it. But on that bad job, I'm joking, but no, we're part of the same thing. I mean, we would much rather deal with less installed properly systems than a whole mess of poor installations. Not all companies agree. You know exactly what brands I'm talking about. No, they'll take anything that they get. No, I mean, we try to sell a quality system that, I think we, from engineering to support, we try to have great systems out there. And the only way to ensure that they're great is the installation of those systems. Yeah, I mean, a lot of ductwork's trash. Like somebody just left a comment and said that 90%, 95% of the ducted jobs they see is always a lack of return, and yeah, and they get. He said he gets sick and tired of fixing someone else's job. Absolutely, I totally understand that. We get
sometimes
that
that's
too.
from their own company.
True.
like we get to do that.
You never know.
We get to do that too. We get to fix somebody else's stuff all the time. That's exactly. I mean, actually, from a tech support standpoint, we get to fix. We get
All
to fix
kinds of
everybody
stuff.
else's job. Like never, the stuff we put in. But yeah,
Well, this one time I did call tech support on this unit I installed in my office. I'm just kidding. I didn't.
who are you going to call? You? Look in the mirror.
So I don't want to beat up on anybody calling tech support because there is legitimacy to
most
calling tech
certainly.
support. And I always will say the only dumb question is the question that's not asked.
Yeah.
I'd rather you call and get the proper answer and do the job right than not call at all, end up damaging that unit,
Right.
and then calling wanting help.
Even on the 24-volt controls on the FLEXX, if you don't know, definitely call us. It's not that we don't want to help you with that. We want to make sure you do it right. Even though Greg's, still heated over here about it, but any question
I may be
whatsoever,
heated about it, but I'd still be very nice. and
you would
answer the
still
question.
answer the question,
And I would not give them a hard time about it.
and that's what tech support's here for, and that's why we have such a great support team. Is we all are here to help, and that's what we live for.
Yeah, it really is. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, with that, I mean, I think we've gone for quite a long time today. With that, I appreciate everybody attending. I appreciate you guys coming on board. Welcome to Jesus Fraga.
Welcome.
So that does it
Happy
for
to be
this
here.
month. We're talking Comfort Live. We'll see you next time. And until then, remember, at GREE, we're by your side.
Hey, thanks for watching Talking Comfort Live with GREE HVAC. Make sure to keep a lookout for an invite to our next show, or subscribe to our GREE Comfort YouTube channel to make sure you get notified anytime we release new content.